What if you could hear women's thoughts? This man found out. We open with a woman named Gigi describing her ex-husband. Nick is a man's man, or what we might call today an alpha male. Nick is a successful guy who works in advertising, even has his own office. His specialty is,
you want babes in bikinis? He's your man.
Booyah. And this is his daughter. How best can I describe Nick? Well, he's always been like an uncle to me.
Uncle Dad.
Yeah, at least you have a dad. Cutting back to Gigi, she regretfully admits to falling for Nick's charming ways as she continues to tell his story. Nick was born and raised in Las Vegas, to a showgirl mother. He spent his days with her backstage, getting all the love from the girls. Lucky boy. Nick clearly didn't grow up in a traditional way.
There's nothing normal about the way Nick Marshall was raised.
And it doesn't take a Freud to tell you this probably messed up the way he views women. Finally, we meet the man himself, Nick, waking up after Stella, his maid, enters his room to clean up. He had an eventful night. When are you gonna get a girl that wears normal undies?
Hey, my mother wore underwear like that.
Weird flex, but okay. Nick keeps calling his maid babe and... Whoa, not cool. Oh, this movie was released in the year 2000. Makes sense. Naturally, Nick then proceeds to pester Stella to make him a sandwich. Nice. Afterwards, Nick gets some coffee and...
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Now, you know this is a movie because somehow this ends up as a happy, wholesome moment. If only the world was really that kind and forgiving. Anyway, Nick is a regular at the shop. He's even on a first-name basis with the hot barista. Wait a minute. Aunt May? Nick asks her out on a date, but she declines. Though, he doesn't give up that easy, and eventually seals the deal.
Sir, that was inspiring. You know.
Based. Nick arrives at work, and his pal, Morgan, shares some news. Did you hear Darcy McGuire left her firm? Ha! Left or fired? Not sure, but everyone is glad she's gone.
Well, so much for edgy female vision.
Say, about that girl from last night. Nothing happened after you let her in the cab, right? Nick merely gives his pal the look, and he knows.
You're like a genius.
Yeah, I know. Continuing on his win streak, Nick shares that he's expecting to get promoted to creative director today. He's in such a good mood that he can't help but crack some jokes around the office. Hey, you know what the difference is between a job and a wife?
After 10 years, the job still sucks.
Facts. He also kindly bestows some dietary advice on this lady. Wholesome. Afterwards, his secretary gives him a rundown of all the silly tasks he made her complete before we meet Nick's loyal assistants.
Afternoon, sire.
You ladies think you can handle yourself on the 44th floor? That's right. Promotion time is here. The gals can hardly contain their excitement.
Get up there already so we can break up the bubbly.
At last, Nick arrives, expecting a hero's welcome. Instead, he gets his speech about how the advertising landscape is fundamentally changing. Did you know that women aged between 16 and 24 are the fastest growing consumer group? We've lost our compass, Nick. Tell me, what do you know about Darcy McGuire?
If she's a real man-eater.
Ha, that's very funny, cause I just hired her. To do what? Look, I love you, man, and I know you can get into women's pants better than anyone else.
Their psyche is a whole other ballgame.
After lots of beating around the bush, his boss, Dan, finally breaks the news. Darcy McGuire is your new creative director. A defeated Nick takes the walk of shame back to his office when, using his remarkable cat-like reflexes, he somehow catches the cork out of the air. Before letting the gals know, he failed. Mission failed. We'll get him next time. We cut to Nick's ex-wife's wedding. May I kiss the bride? Nick gives his best wishes and learns that they're going on a 2-week honeymoon cruise. In that time, he'll have to take care of his daughter, Alex. Gigi also lets slip that Alex has a boyfriend. Nick's masculine urge to beat up his daughter's boyfriend kicks in. But before things get too hairy, Alex bids them all a kind farewell.
Nick.
Honey?
Later.
Back at work, Nick heads in to face his next headache, meeting his arch nemesis. As she enters, Nick drops his pen and comes to realize that Darcy ain't so bad.
Hello?
The pair proceed to get acquainted and admit to knowing each other's spicy rumors.
Can't all be true.
I hope not. Nick gets a pat of reassurance and the meeting begins. Darcy starts things off bloviating about teamwork and dedication. Boring. Let's play rock, paper, scissors.
What we feel.
Okay, let's move on, shall we? Female-directed advertising is a $40 billion market that we are completely missing out on. To rectify this, Darcy has prepared multiple gift boxes full of feminine products. We got a Wonder Bra, an anti-aging cream. Once was enough, man. Anyway, by 8:30 a.m. tomorrow, everyone is to present a pitch for every product. At home, Nick gets into a working mood by drinking, putting on some jazz, and breaking out into a full dance sequence. To each his own, I guess. He inspects the items and tries to put himself into a woman's shoes. Clearly, he underestimated just how hard it is to wear heels. Seeding a productivity boost, Nick rummages through his daughter's things before finding some girly music. You go, girl. It's not long before Nick is in the bathroom, fully immersed in a feminine reality. He's got the anti-pore nose strip, the painted nails, and is working on the mascara. Christ, that hurts. Who would do this to themselves? Oh, the pain has only just begun. Nick prepares some hot wax and slathers it upon his hairy leg. He slaps on some paper and then puts his manhood to the test. Okay, his manhood is now completely gone. Time for some pantyhose. Nick wrestles to get the delicate fabric over his beefy quads when...
Hi!
Alex walks in with her boyfriend, Cameron, no less. The encounter is awkward to say the least.
Nice nail polish.
Hey, don't kink shame. Then, Nick catches them kissing through the mirror. Cameron leaves and the two hash it out. Why are you snooping through my stuff? Why are you kissing boys? You don't even know his name. And with that, Alex storms off. Nick desperately tries to recall that boy's stupid name. Oh.
His name is Cameron!
Nick accidentally spills some beads? Why do you have beads? Anyway, he trips and stumbles for what feels like a year before finding his footing. Just kidding. He falls into the tub, and before he can get out, the hairdryer he was holding joins him. And that was today's video. Hope you enjoyed. Just kidding. Nick wakes up to the sound of Stella's voice. She starts complaining about the mess, and Nick defends himself. But she's quite feisty today.
Are we in a mood today?
Or so it seems. Nick doesn't realize this yet, but he's hearing her thoughts. He goes on with his day and gets another taste of his new power. What the? I'm scared too, man. Nick decides to walk things off, but soon realizes the truth. He can hear women's thoughts. Even this poodle.
I need to poop.
Aw. Nick panics and is still disturbed as he arrives to work, quickly realizing that the women are not so fond of him and his antics in the office.
Because I have a...
Yeah, that about sums it up. On the bright side, his ever-loyal assistants have nothing negative to think about him. That's a relief. However, he's still in a panic. Nick browses through a phone book for anyone who can help him. Yes, kids, this was a thing. Then, Morgan fetches him for their 8:30 meeting with Darcy. No, I can't. I need help. Morgan, confused, gets him walking and talking as Nick finally reveals that he can hear women's thoughts. Morgan reveals skeptical even after Nick reveals his lawyer's thoughts on him.
She thinks you're overpaid. And gay.
What?
Listen, man, I can even hear French poodles, apparently. Morgan is quick to remind him that if he tells anyone else about this, he's going to a loony bin. Suddenly, this nerdy girl walks by while wondering if anyone would notice if she jumped out the window.
Probably not if I didn't get glass on anybody.
Okay. Moving on to the meeting, Darcy's thoughts reveal that she's just as nervous as everyone else. She notes that Nick is the only one looking eager to speak, plus he's actually making eye contact with her. Surprising. Though Nick does manage to sneak in a peek, not surprised. Darcy asks him for his insights, but Nick is left flustered as he unsuccessfully tries to sell his lipstick idea. What about...
An idea involving the Swedish bikini team.
Nick once again realizes that he's not actually well liked by the women of the office, contrary to their laughter of approval. So, Darcy moves to a different proposal, which Nick quickly interrupts with another idea. An idea he stole from this lady's thoughts.
The Advil. So mild and gentle. You can take it even when you're faking.
The men gleefully approve, but the women remain silent, denying that they use Advil to get out of tickle time with their husbands. Even the one who had the thought in the first place.
Asshole.
Okay,
Ashamed, Nick retreats, but Darcy commends him for trying. On the other hand, Morgan is like, who gave you that idea, the French poodle? Ha, good one. Nick goes home early and catches Cameron copping a feel. Alex is embarrassed and panics as Nick hears her thoughts and hands her her bra. Cameron tries to defuse the situation but gets kicked out. Nick disapproves of the boy after finding out that he's much older than his daughter, even going so far as to not allow Alex to go to prom with him. Boys only want one thing. I, for one, just want to be happy. Anyway, Cameron leaves and Alex chases after him. Meanwhile, Nick decides to pull a flash, recreating last night's experiment. Though, in Nick's case, he wants his powers gone for good. This time, he stands on his balcony with the hairdryer held high, waiting for a mighty lightning strike. Don't try this at home, kids.
Bolts of lightning from his arms.
Whoa, wrong universe? Same actor, though. Nick ends up surviving and immediately goes to check on his powers.
I need a woman.
Can't relate. He goes to the mall and it looks like he's been cured. Hurrah! Oh, never mind. Spoke too soon. Once again, Nick is bombarded with women's thoughts. He visits Dr. Perkins, his and Gigi's former therapist, and immediately opens up about his condition. Naturally, she doesn't believe him, but after a few guessing games, his uncanny ability cannot be denied.
Even though I'm a grown woman of 51, 47.
Oh, my lips are sealed.
Holy!
Dr. Perkins believes that Nick's new ability is a gift. She begins to open his mind as she convinces him that he's extraordinarily lucky. With the perspective of both a man and a woman, you could very well rule the world. After the enlightening experience, Nick returns to his old smiley self as he visits Lola. Overhearing her thoughts, he finds out that she's very into him, which I'm sure Uncle Ben will be rather upset to learn. Nick follows the doctor's advice and puts his gift to use. Reading her mind, he learns that she's scared to get hurt again. So, Nick mirrors her thoughts, showing a more vulnerable side of himself. And with that, the date is secured. Take notes, boys. Back in the office, Morgan confronts the lawyer. You think I like boys?
Was it the hair? The highlights happen to be natural.
She assures him she never said that, and as she walks away...
Who has he been talking to?
Then, Nick arrives in a good mood. As he chats with the ladies, he works to improve his relationship with them little by little, especially showing concern for Erin, the depressed glasses girl from earlier. Then, he makes his way to Darcy's office and admires her.
Why do I always feel like he's checking me out?
No. He's just checking out the, decor, right, Nick?
Great photographs.
Nice save. Nick tries to convince her to give him the opportunity to sell to the big fish.
Who's your whale?
However, Darcy remains resolute in doing it herself. But Nick once again uses his ability to his advantage and learns that Nike's women division is shopping for a new firm.
I heard no one knew.
Suddenly, Dan interrupts them both to get some insights on a different project. Nick takes hold of the situation, using Darcy's own ideas as his own. She's completely taken aback and tries to give further insight, but her ideas are dismissed. Then, an assistant enters and chimes in that Nick has a call from his daughter. He picks up and acts nicer than usual to impress Darcy, even faking a pleasant goodbye to Alex when she's already hung up on his face. Darcy starts seeing Nick in a new light and even lends a helping hand about his daughter.
Going to the prom is mostly about the dress.
Feeling victorious, Nick leaves while remarking that with all this brain picking, Darcy won't last a month. Afterwards, he heads home to visit Alex. Nick's really getting the hang of his gift as he turns his daughter's disapproving friends into admiring ones. You guys can order as much pizza as you want, and Alex, we really ought to go dress shopping together.
Oh, that is so sweet.
Before he can get to that dress, Nick has business to attend to with Lola. Unfortunately, he gets performance anxiety and has to compose himself in the bathroom. Turns out, now that he has his gift, he learns that he's not as gifted, in some areas, as he thought.
I can do this better.
Wanna bet?
With the guidance of his gift, Nick figures things out. Continuing to use his powers, he immerses himself in the company of women. Nick goes covert and does research while listening to their inner thoughts and desires. At work, he snoops on Darcy's ideas again and carefully writes them down. One day, she excitedly presents her new poster to Dan, only to find that Nick has already beaten her to the punch. Brutal. Meanwhile, Nick is getting along splendidly with his female coworkers. Now that he's in touch with his feminine side, they consider him one of their own. He's even got great advice.
He can't just ignore you all night, stay glued to the TV like some zombie, and then expect you to turn it on like a light bulb.
Preach, Queen. Later, Nick meets with Darcy to work together on the Nike proposal. He follows her train of thought and is enthusiastically waiting for her to finish. But Darcy catches him nodding. Sus. They eventually form the slogan for the proposal. No games, just sports.
Did he come up with that or did I?
Darcy is confused but impressed. She confesses that she's heard of Nick's chauvinist reputation and is amazed at how different he really is. And Nick shares the same sentiment about her. Feeling smitten, Darcy urges herself not to fall for a coworker.
God, I just looked at his pee.
Whoa, Nick is absolutely loving this. At night, he catches Darcy working late. Time to turn the charm on. He joins her and realizes how vulnerable she is. He offers his help after finding out that she's working overtime because he took her desired meeting time with Dan. She needs to present her work by tomorrow instead of later in the week because of him. While on the outside Darcy is optimistic and confident, Nick sees, or rather hears, the truth. And now, he's starting to feel guilty about abusing his powers. Anyway, back to work, Nick gives his opinions on the pantyhose product, stating that it's a definite winner. Have you ever tried them? Did you put it in the pink box? Darcy is surprised but delighted at the revelation.
How did you look in them?
Hot.
As the two bond over Nick's cross-dressing experience, we come to find that the pair have an undeniable chemistry. Sometime later, Nick fulfills his dress shopping duties with Alex. We commence with the classic movie montage of trying on outfits while being goofy, laughing, and dancing for no reason. They finally agree on a pink dress, and...
This is what I'll be wearing the last night I'm a...
Uh-oh, bros. Nick confronts Alex over some food and tries to give her the talk. But Alex assures him that Mom already gave her the rundown. Okay, but you don't understand what guys really want. Alex counters with...
You've never had a real relationship with anyone in your entire life.
Ouch. If you slow down enough, you can see the exact moment Nick's heart breaks. Alex leaves Nick to wallow in the realization that he's too late to be a good father. The women around him chime in as well.
Move on, dude. It's over.
Back at home, Nick watches television. No, not sports or anything like that. He's into the girly stuff now. Suddenly, it's Darcy. Nick gets ahead of himself and responds to her thoughts.
And I was thinking of you.
I was thinking about you too.
They down bad. The two agree to meet for drinks. Darcy has her guard down and reveals her relationship with her ex-husband. She shares that they worked together and how their relationship turned sour as she became more successful. Though, on the other hand, she's feeling very unsuccessful at her new job. All thanks to Nick. Funnily enough, she actually apologizes to him for complaining given that it was the job he wanted. Feeling guilty, Nick thanks her and praises her work ethic. Darcy echoes the compliment before mentioning that she just bought her own apartment. Then, she has a saucy thought.
If we kissed, would it ruin everything?
Nick is at a loss for words, but she breaks the silence for him. Nick initially hesitates but then goes all in. After many smooches, it's time for Darcy to head home. Before entering the taxi, she tries to work up the courage to ask Nick to come home with her. However, Nick intercepts the thought and wishes her a good night instead. He doesn't want to rush things and probably feels really shitty about the whole sabotaging her job thing. After, and on the way to his apartment, Nick spots Lola looking absolutely crazy. She confronts him about ghosting her for 6 days, noting that he even...
Stop drinking coffee!
But it's okay, because I know your little secret. What? It's the reason you can think and talk like women.
Admit it, you're totally and completely gay!
Seeing this as an absolute win, Nick goes along to appease the crazed Lola. They embrace for a farewell hug, then we cut to tomorrow at the office. Nick tries to convince Darcy to do the pitch for Nike, but fails.
No, this is your baby.
Suddenly, Nick once again notices Erin's depressed thoughts and decides to investigate. Turns out, he turned her down for a writing job. In fact, he never met with her.
Oh, you told me to blow her off.
Then, Morgan walks in to let Nick know that Nike's team is all women, his specialty. Despite the good news, Nick confesses that he can't stand what he's doing to Darcy.
You doing Darcy? Since when?
No, that's not what I said. God, men are so dumb.
Oh, are you officially a woman now?
I wish I was, Nick says while approaching the pitch room. During the meeting, Nick absolutely knocks it out of the park while Dan and Darcy look on approvingly. Right after, with his guilt reaching a fever pitch, Nick begins to write a confession letter addressed to Darcy. However, she pulls up dancing in a celebratory mood. She invites him back to her place and... Nice. Nick asks her about the place and she excitedly gives him the complete tour. Unfortunately, the bed isn't set up yet. Though, with the help of some music coming from outside, the pair enjoyed the night anyway with some romantic, slow dancing. The next day, Nick goes to Dan and he reveals that Nike chose them. Dan thanks him for practically saving the company. However, Nick isn't as enthusiastic and mentions that Darcy is the one he should be thanking. She's the best creative director I've ever seen. Unexpectedly, Nick asks for a leave of absence to Dan's outrage.
You mean have nobody running the shop?
But what about Darcy? Yeah, I already fired her. Nick pleads with him to call her, but Dan defends his decision. Nike wants you, not her. There's no me without her. You want to thank me for saving the company? Hire her back. Now that Dan is convinced, Nick needs to go find Darcy. He tries to get in contact with her, but gets distracted after hearing that Erin has gone missing. He searches for her, and an old lady helps him find Erin's place. Suddenly... Is this a sign? Nick eventually finds a place and notices an open bottle of medication. He panics as he finds a letter addressed to Erin's mom. She's alive! As they chat, Nick realizes he can't hear any of her thoughts. I'm back! He's ecstatic, but Erin is still very much confused. Why are you in my house? Nick confesses that he was worried about her. She's touched. He proceeds to offer her the job she previously wanted, a copywriter. Erin gleefully accepts. Then, Nick visits Darcy's place and tries to get her attention to no avail. To make matters worse, Nick gets a call from Gigi alerting him that Alex has been calling her. Nick remembers her prom and goes to find her in the bathroom crying. He tries to apologize for forgetting about the prom, but Alex says she's crying because of Cameron. They had plans, which Cameron rented a hotel for. However, Alex wasn't ready for the pipe. So naturally, Cameron dumped her. Nick commends her decision and is proud of how mature his daughter is.
You know how ahead of the game you are?
They go home and Nick takes one last look at Alex before looking for Darcy. She is a snack, but you won't find her there. Instead, he heads back to Darcy's place and she finally buzzes him in. Darcy is planning on selling the place now that she lost her job, but Nick points out that Dan already gave her job back. She doesn't believe him given that she kinda failed at the job she was hired for. However, Nick confesses that she did in fact do her job. It was just that someone was sabotaging her by stealing her ideas. That someone being him. He adds that while getting close to her to steal her job, he came to learn how wonderful of a woman she was. You shook up my world, changed my life, and absolutely dazzled me. And I love how smart and dedicated you are. Nick reveals that he isn't there to rescue her, but rather admits to being the one needing rescuing. Now powerless, he asks for Darcy's thoughts as he can no longer read her mind.
I think you're fired.
Well, so much for that. Embarrassed and heartbroken, Nick walks off.
That's it?
I don't want that to be it. And so, it isn't. Darcy forgives him and the two embrace.
What a hero.
Moral of the story? Women are cool.